Hi, this is Dr. Melody Hilton with StopDevaluation's My Story. And I'm really excited for today because I want to introduce you to Larry Putney. Welcome.
Thank you.
I'm so excited because Larry is an amazing business owner in the community that I live. And it excites me because I know he's a man of character, a man of integrity, one that loves his community, and one that really values individuals. As with everyone else, we all have a story where we felt shame or we felt like we weren't good enough or we had situations in our life that seemed to devalue us. And so I would just love to hear your story.
I would say whenever the devaluation came in would be, um, I can't remember exactly how old I was. I was roughly 9 years old. And I was on the bus on the way to school, and a good friend of mine was telling me how his mom and dad were getting a divorce. And I remember telling him, well, my dad would never do that to me. And about a couple months went by, and my mother and father ended up getting a divorce, and my dad left. So that was very shameful too, and that just seemed to snowball into several things where, as we know, sometimes kids they're not always nice. And so it ended up where kids started picking on me, and once one kid starts, then they all kind of seem to jump in on that.
Aw.
And yeah, it's just the way kids are. And then people talk about bullying. Well, bullying's been around, ever since I've been a kid. So, um, but yeah, so that was where I started to feel devalued. Actually, ended up in special education class because my grades fell down so low.
Because of being bullied at that time, that it affected you, it affected your grades?
It was a combination of being bullied. I was very, I will, looking back, I would say I was very depressed, about my father leaving. Um, but yeah, it was one of those things. I knew that I could do better, and I didn't really need to be in that class. But it really, at the same time, I wasn't confident enough in myself to know, to push forward and to push through, and to. I was very um, aware and conscious, and actually, I looked for man's approval and the
Mm.
kids' approval, and really, I wasn't confident enough in myself, and to push forward and to move on through that. So it was a lot of shame.
Larry, isn't it true that when we don't see our value, we're afraid to take risk?
Yeah, definitely. At that time, I was afraid to reach out and really to try and excel at anything and to push myself in any way. And yeah, so I would definitely agree with that statement that when you feel devalued, when you are even in that phase, being so young, going through and not very sure of myself, and now I didn't really have a sounding board, my father, to bounce that off of. So
Did you
yeah.
ever take false responsibility or feel like there was something you might have done, or if you would have been a better kid, he might not have left? Did you ever project any of that onto yourself, even though
Um,
it's not true?
Partially, I would say in some way, I was even called, well, my dad's not there, so now I'm the man of the family. So that makes um, this young kid who doesn't even know how to be a boy yet or a kid and enjoy himself. Now all of a sudden now he has to grow up and become the man of the family,
Wow.
and with that kind of responsibility. Yeah, and I had no clue what I was doing with that. So yeah.
Well, Larry, were there ever any individuals that really connected to you and saw your values, saw your potential, saw your worth, and spoke into that, which began to shape and or reshape the way you thought about yourself?
Definitely. I would definitely say that my coaches in high school had a big impact on my life. Actually, football was extremely good for me. It was a confidence builder. When my dad left, I was kind of a scrawny little kid, and somewhere in between then and high school, My mom actually banned me from growing because I think I shot up about 6 inches and went through about 4 or 5 shoe sizes and how many clothing sizes. So I got bigger, and football was good for me because I realized that, you know, more what it was to become a man, and actually to have that self confidence come back. And but I would say the other one that was being influenced, my mother. I will give her credit. She was amazing, working several jobs to make sure my sister and I were taken care of. But actually, when my mom remarried with my stepdad, admittedly, as probably most stepkids will go through, I didn't appreciate him at all. And who's this guy coming in and telling me what to do, you know? And you're not my dad. And actually, by the end of high school, I went up to him one time and I told him how much I appreciated him being in my life, and actually telling me and pushing me. And one time I asked him, I said, why do you keep, telling me what to do and pushing me? He said, because you can do it.
Aw.
And yeah, and it really, what I lost in my father leaving, my stepfather he was that kind of beacon that did instill a lot of confidence in me. But as I said, not at first. It was a rough road for we kind of had the first couple years. But really, nowadays they call it a blended family, coming from different fathers and mothers. But really, that can work. But it is the harder road. You have to make it work, but it is also the more rewarding. So.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
So even though he wasn't your natural father, he really began to fill that role in your heart, along with a coach who was also another man, or
Yes.
probably was multiple individuals.
Yes, actually, with that, I can say that I think the biggest thing, whenever you come from a divorced family, and especially I can't speak as a young woman, but coming as a young man and not having my father there,
Yeah.
having that role model, and what do I do in this situation? And I remember it carried over into my marriage with my beautiful wife Laura. We just celebrated 28 years.
Aw.
So, but yeah, when we got married, we got into we'll call it a intense fellowship, and she said something that I don't advise any woman ever say to their man, but basically, why don't you be the man of the house that you should be. Basically, I said, I don't know how. And I told her, I said, I don't know what I'm doing with this. I said, I'm making this up day by day, and what works, then I'll build off of that. But what doesn't work, okay, I just put that aside, and we'll move on and do something different. So that was some of the challenges that I faced moving forward, even into marriage, and not having a father figure there. But as I said, my stepfather was a good father figure. But I only had him before we got married for a couple years, so we didn't get that deep into it. But
Well, one thing I really appreciate about you, Larry, is you've taken your pain, but you've allowed purpose to arise. And what you didn't have, you chose to become. I see an amazing man who truly values others and invests into others, and especially young people, probably because
yes.
you knew what it was like to be a young man without a father. And when you see that, you want to be a part of one to validate them and encourage them and give them hope. And so tell me some different ways that you feel that your voice or your passion or your ability to generate value in others is manifested in your life, and even through your business.
Yeah, I would say that kind of started even back whenever I was in high school, when as I said, in football was very good for me, and brought a lot of self-confidence. But even then, what happened there was we would have some of the underclassmen in football, and the seniors would try, just try and dominate them, and that just really bothered me, coming from someone who was the underdog, and now nobody really treated me like the underdog anymore because I was kind of a bigger dude, so they didn't want to make me mad. But I really kind of took to if you want to say, took a lot of the underclassmen under my wing, and I can see that sort of portrayed into nowadays. We have a lot of A lot of young men come into the store and just, they just want to talk sometimes, and I'm perfectly fine with that, and just kind of hang out, and I really take that as a responsibility. It is something that I try to be guarded in what I say and what I do, just because I want to be a good example to them, and in many ways, a father figure for those who don't have that, and try and follow and those who, as my coaches or my stepfather, and do what they did. So
That's really beautiful, Larry, because isn't it true? You have influence on others that you can help rewire the instructions of the way they think about themselves just by the way you treat them and the way you value them and the way you give them time and you give them hope, you give them
yeah,
courage. And so isn't it beautiful when we can be those that, even though we've gone through difficult seasons of our life, that we can take those difficulties and be able to understand and value others and be a part of the solution in our world rather than making excuses for what we didn't have. Choose to be to others what we did not receive ourselves. Thank
yes.
you so much, Larry, for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It was my pleasure.
I love you and I honor you. Thank you so much for joining my story. Please subscribe and connect to the Stop Devaluation movement and become a part of the solution.